Since the Sandbox fans, we're here, we're back. We've been working fresh off a divisional weekend. Special guest Kyle Arrington was just in here on Thursday. We had Tommy G and Prosciutto Poppy in here on Saturday. We're slinging the positional rankings, backlogging some content just to make sure that we're keeping you guys satisfied with everything going on in the NFL while I'm still on vacation. So today we're going to give you guys our top 10 at the cornerback position. We gave you guys the safeties, and there was some heartfelt stories. There was some great stats, and of course there was some shit talk, and you should expect all of that. Maybe not so much of the heartfelt in this one, but
not much loving going on here.
Yeah. But Twan, starting off this list at 10. When I first scripted up this list, this dude wasn't in. So just missing the list, I had Darius Williams, who was that original at the 10 spot, Jacksonville Jaguars, producing a top 10 cornerback season once again, 2 seasons in a row. And Trent McDuffie also had a great year just outside of that 10. I feel like it's really hard to be handed a top 10 cornerback position with the way the NFL is called, the way it's officiated, and the talent at the wide receiver position. So narrowing down 10 dudes on this list was not easy, and people would definitely value that differently. But to get to 10, this dude, I feel like I'm kind of disrespecting him a little bit having him here at 10, but I mean, from off the list, this is great recognition. So we want to talk about an all-pro, L'Jarius Sneed, all-pro, absolutely for that Kansas City defense. We're talking about 50% of the passes thrown his way were just completed. So you're already talking about more than half of the production on those wide receivers cut. A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, 2 of the top receivers in the NFL, only allowed 1 reception on those dudes. DJ Moore, Calvin Ridley, Garrett Wilson, JJ, and Tyreek Hill, one-on-one, he allowed less than 32 yards against every single one of these dudes. We might as well have just said the top 10 wide receivers list talking about L'Jarius Sneed. He had 14 pass breakups, 2 interceptions, 5 tackles for a loss. Really interested to hear if L'Jarius Sneed is on your positional rankings. I feel like if all of those numbers didn't do enough for you, go watch the film on that Miami game. Dude put Tyreek Hill's ass right into Cancun.
God, I love to see it too. Man, I hate those Chiefs, but man, I hate Tyreek more so. Good work out of L'Jarius. You may hear that name, but you're going to have to find out. Well, a couple of guys that just missed, and really, I have a couple of names on this list. A lot of them missed really because of injury, like Brandon Stevens, not necessarily because of injury. I think he played pretty well. I mean, Slay is always somebody that you can consider in here, but I actually don't have him making the rankings. I think they were pretty exposable this year. I know he missed some games. You have Jair Alexander missing some games, so I didn't include him in here. Those are some big names that I just don't have in this list. But coming in at number 10, I didn't think we were going to have a good season out of the guy. 61 total tackles. He had a sack, 3 fumble recoveries, 5 picks, 14 pass deflections. One of those picks went to the house. Rasul Douglas here at 10, Steve.
Yeah.
So I got Rasul Douglas here on the list. I can't believe I'm putting a Buffalo Bill corners in this list because I do think they need work at the corner position still. But Rasul Douglas had a really, really good year from someone that we actually didn't really expect that much out of. And I really got to give some credit to him this year because the way he played, it shocked me because I know he's played a little bit in Green Bay and it just wasn't the best.
He started off the year real shaky. His success was determined with the role he had to play in Buffalo. Luckily, with Micah Hyde and Poyer back there, that's a secondary that has a lot of experience to really, make that transition seamless. But you're talking about a dude that wasn't respected as a top corner in the league, went to Buffalo when they were depleted with injury in the middle of the year and needed help. And they never would have thought for the compensation that they gave up for Rasul Douglas that would have been the case. Rasul Douglas is also on my list. He's a little bit higher. I have him at 6 on my list. And just because, you went in the stats, I'm just going to add here.
Please.
He had the 6th best Pro Football Focus grade as an overall cornerback. And that grade was an 82. So, I mean, you're talking about a really solid season out of him when the defensive side of the ball for Buffalo wasn't really getting a lot of love. So, you'll hear Rasul Douglas back on my list in a little bit, but we're not going to go too in-depth about that, already sharing all this information.
Yeah, I mean, just a great season. That's how I really want to cap it off. Really great season and one that I didn't entirely expect, so I've got to give him some recognition here.
Absolutely. Now, this one might be a little bit low for you. I'm expecting you to have this guy higher up on the list. Maybe not too much higher. I think top 5 would be a stretch, especially when you see a rookie cornerback last year have such an impact that early. So at 9, this is where I'm going to have Devin Witherspoon. So I don't know if you have him on your list or not. I know that this is really tough recognition, but Devin Witherspoon this year versus the Bengals, 2 top wide receivers and a top quarterback, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Joe Burrow, and Joe Mixon. I know we're talking about the Bengals of the 2023 season, but still, he only allowed 14 yards in coverage that single game. Like, that's a very impressive stat going against 2 dudes that are going to make $30 million plus next year.
He had some standout games too here, Steve. So I'm going to spoil it for you. I have Devon Witherspoon here at 8. So
okay.
1 above you. Really, really close. I agree. He's not top 5 yet.
Yeah.
I think he's well on his way to getting there future in his career. I think he's one of the future cornerstones at the corner position in the NFL going forward. Great year this year. Had a number of standout games. I was really, really impressed with what we've seen. This draft class, man, they have some good corners. We have obviously Christian Gonzalez, who got hurt. But when you look at Witherspoon, you look at him, you look at Forbes, you look at your boy Tay Banks, the corners out of this draft class were really, really good, while Devon Witherspoon's the only rookie that had made this list, I believe.
Yes.
I'm excited to see what's to come, dude.
Yeah, and I mean, just to back up with some numbers, we're talking about 97-yard pick six. So, like, scoring a touchdown, getting an interception, all of that, that's great. I feel like the presence, I don't want to say the presence of the Legion of Boom, but a 2.0 is definitely ruined. On the opposite side, you talk about Arik Woolen. You got 3 great safeties, Julian Love, Jamal Adams. We talked about Julian Love on the prior episode. But, when you just put in these numbers, 79 total tackles for a corner, usually you don't see corners that want to tackle by any means, and 3 sacks. So he can also be that guy right around the line of scrimmage that you wouldn't want to see. Not afraid to tackle in the run game. Devin Witherspoon is definitely a... If you were to trade Devin Witherspoon for Russell Wilson, I think that they would have made that trade. So the fact that they got a lot more with that,
Oh my gosh! And another thing I want to touch on here, Steve. Only 1 interception. It was a house call, but 16 pass deflections.
Yeah.
They tried to throw at this guy.
Yeah.
They weren't overly successful. 16 pass deflections is a great number out of a rookie corner. Now, there are some better numbers on this list in terms of pass deflections, but we're looking at the number 8 corner on my list, number 9 on yours. I'm going to kick it off with number 9 on my list. I know we're just going backwards by 1, but Jaylon Johnson in Chicago had a really, really good year.
That's low, Twan.
That's low, man. I just look. I think he had a great season, 4 interceptions, 10 pass deflections, 1 house call. Really, really good work out of him this year, though. And this is a name that I want to say it's his 3rd year in the league. He's finally coming to his own. He really helped solidify the back end, the secondary of Chicago this year. Their defense picked it up in the back half of the year. Jaylon Johnson's a real good reason why, because people were a little afraid to throw at him come that point, halfway point in the season.
I think when I talk about Jaylon Johnson, I'm going to put a little quote that you mentioned on the show in prior years, a little quote that Kev Sinatra would mention on the show in prior years. Numbers don't tell the story.
Numbers don't. You're damn right, Steve. You're damn right. It's hard when guys won't throw at them, though. It's crazy.
It absolutely is, and that's exactly part of the conversation. So we'll get to that. At 8, this is where I have PS2. Pat Surtain. This is a dude that has definitely gone a little bit of higher recognition. This is another guy that the numbers won't always tell the story because he's following around your number 1 wide receiver, and big stat lines that we look for at the cornerback position. You look for interceptions. You look for pass deflections. You look for, completion percentage and how many touchdowns you allowed. And this was obviously a lot more of a poorer year from that Broncos secondary. And I feel like I reflected on that a little bit when I talked about Justin Simmons on the back end of his rankings. But Pat Surtain is definitely still, a top corner in the league. 69 total tackles. He isn't afraid to make that tackle for the running backs. Had an interception and a tackle for loss with 12 pass deflections. Feel like a lot of that 12 pass deflections. Like you're talking about like top dudes like Devontae Adams, he has beef with, and, just some of the other top wide receivers in that division, Keenan Allen, Rashee Rice is a very notable name for years to come. So the fact that Pat Surtain is seeing those dudes twice and 6 times in a year, if you're talking about the division as a whole, this dude's a problem. This dude's going to be a staple of that defense for years to come. And it might not have been Pat Surtain's best year, but the future's real promising for that dude.
I mean, that dude is one of the best corners in the league, most well-rounded. He is an absolute stud. You'll see where I have him in the rankings. I'm not going to get to him just yet. I got to say, dude, pure talent, quite possibly the best corner in the league as far as pure talent goes.
Yeah, a lot more of that bigger type of mold. And, we don't usually see the bigger corners that can actually move like that. He reminds me of the Brandon Browner builds with legit Sauce Gardner ball skills. It's crazy.
Dude is locked down.
Yep.
That's the last because I'm gonna go in a little bit of.
I was gonna say, what are you're gonna take all the information? You're gonna have nothing to say.
I know, seriously.
When you say Pat Surtain at 3,
so just wait a sec, because I do have Witherspoon at 8, but it's gonna come back to you at 7, Steve. Unless you want me to kick off a 7.
You can go 7.
All right, I'll go 7. So a guy that you had just missed your rankings. I'm gonna go with Trent McDuffie here at 7, Steve. 5 forced fumbles, 3 sacks. I mean, the dude had an excellent year. He was good in coverage, but he played a different kind of corner position where he was really moving all over the field, and it was very helpful to have a guy on the other side that is just locked down on L'Jarius Sneed. I was very impressed by Trent McDuffie this year, and that's another guy that when I'm thinking about that, when I think of KC, prior to this year, defense was not my thought when I was thinking of KC. He's one of the guys that really solidified that defense and made them more of a defense-heavy team.
And I feel like people really don't understand the difficulty of being able to do that transition while winning.
Yep.
With the contract numbers that you do. I mean, I feel like Trent McDuffie was drafted to the Kansas City Chiefs when Tyreek Hill was still on the roster. So you're talking about Tyreek Hill, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes. Obviously for the most prominent names at those positions, regardless of your opinion.
Yeah. Sorry.
But yeah. But when you talk about the development of a Trent McDuffie and how this team transitioned this year from, okay, this is the best offense in the NFL with the best quarterback, you can't say that it was the best defense this year, but it definitely wasn't outside that top 5 with the way that they played. You mentioned L'Jarius Sneed. Trent McDuffie stepped up and has a very promising future. Nick Bolton is not going to be a name that I mentioned on the linebacker list this season, but still had a crazy year. Injuries banged him up a little bit. But, Justin Reed on the back end made a huge hit this weekend that I feel like was detrimental in the game, and I feel like defenders don't always get the credit because some of these stats don't always tell their stories, but Trent McDuffie absolutely had an incredible year this year and a huge part of Kansas City still being alive at the AFC Championship. At 7, this dude played less games this year, and I feel like just me saying that you might have an understanding. He did get deemed an All-Pro only playing in 11 games, so I feel like that's an absolute standout. With that being said, part of the best or the second best defense. Talk about a lot of great defenses right now.
There's a lot of good defenses.
Yeah, but the Browns absolutely stood out this year. This is where I have Denzel Ward with 11 pass deflections and 2 interceptions. Like I mentioned, all-pro year for him. They had great cornerback play from that entire room. Greg Newsome, coming in as a young draftee and just being able to play his roles. Zadarius Smith, Myles Garrett, a Browns team that they got worked by a good Texans team in the playoff, but this story should have been written off week 4 as soon as Nick Chubb, blew one of his tires. So the fact that it wasn't comes a lot down to the play of stars like Denzel Ward on that defensive side of the ball.
I love that you put him in there. I left him out because of the just availability. I think there were other guys on the list that I really wanted to get in here, but I mean, that's great. You know how much I enjoy
Denzel Ward.
Denzel Ward, Newsome, that Browns defense is unbelievable. I enjoy watching the Browns play. I know that some people might not like it, but that defense is a really, really good defense. And Denzel Ward, he's a lockdown corner. This dude is one of the premier corners in the league, and it pained me not to put him in here. I am glad you did. I really am glad you did because I wanted to give him that recognition. I just wanted to make sure that I was getting some of the names in here that I played, 16 games and stuff like that.
I didn't like the fact that the first sentence that I read up, just on Denzel Ward trying to gather some of the information was, well, Denzel Ward lasted longer in Cleveland than Baker Mayfield. And I'm like, what the fuck does that have to do with Denzel Ward?
You know whose fault it is? Baker's out of Cleveland, right?
Yeah.
So let's just say Mr. Diva decided to ruin his career. But look, I'm very happy for Baker and what he's doing in Tampa Bay. And I do like Odell. I like to poke fun a little bit, but
yeah.
He really ruined that locker room. People want to say it was Baker. Dude, Baker is loved in Tampa Bay. Everywhere else he goes, they like the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sit here and solely put that blame on Odell because I do feel like he kind of put up for them. At the same time, I feel like a lot more blame, if you want to, solely put it on an offensive player that didn't perform there. Like Jarvis Landry, that dude was being paid $15, $17 million a year, and now, where is he?
No idea.
Jarvis Landry, where are you at, dude?
Where are you at, dude? Oh, my gosh.
But, I just feel like that was part of the changing of the colors in Cleveland. And I have to give all of those dudes credit because they were part of it. They still made the playoffs. Baker Mayfield still took a team there. They just with the Browns, you know?
Yeah.
So, but we talked about Rasul Douglas at 6. I'm going to jump in here with my 5. 5 is also a dude that missed some time this season, but I just feel like with what he accomplished in his playing games, couldn't leave him off, especially for what he meant to that defense. Team that just got eliminated this past weekend. This is where I have Derek Stingley Jr. here at 5. Passer rating allowed against him, 41.
I snubbed. I'm an asshole, and I snubbed him. I love Derek Stingley, too, and I did look at him as one of these names was putting on the list.
But he wasn't even on your snub list.
He wasn't on my snub list. That's just me just forgetting to type that in the honorable mention snub list, but I promise you, he's one of those names. He's in the notes in my phone as serious consideration, and he just kind of slipped off.
He's in the notes in my phone as hit this dude's DMs.
Pause, brother.
But with Derek Stingley, he had the 5th best Pro Football Focus grade at the position with an overall 82, 13 pass deflections, and 5 interceptions, which was tied for the 4th most in the entire NFL this year. Derek Stingley, along with Jaylon Petrie in that back end, is only going to continue to develop, and it's crazy in one off season what this team was able to build. And people say, you can't build through the draft. You can't build through free agency. You can't do it all in one year. It's all a fucking excuse because it was shown to us by, I don't want to say a dog shit organization, but by a team that was legit swill. Like that Case Keenum was carrying for a number of years. DeAndre Hopkins and J.J. Watt, Andre Johnson, Arian Foster, all loved historians of that organization, but what they have brewing right now is vastly different from what was established to that greatness at that time with Matt Schaub.
Steve, it's damn special is what it is. That is a special team, and I can't wait to see what they do next year. At number 6, I didn't put him in number 5 because watching the games, you get 2 different guys when you watch him play. Steve, do you have an idea of where I'm going?
Yeah, it's my 4. It's DaRon Bland.
You're damn right. It's DaRon Bland. Now, this dude had an incredible season. One of those seasons that I go, who the heck is this guy before this? And he just balls out.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Seriously. It's like you look and it's like, you can do a better McGregor impression than that. Come on.
Probably not.
Who the fuck is that guy? That wasn't great either.
Yeah,
Cut.
Yeah. Well,
But
I'm an Italian guy. I don't got that Irish in me.
that's right.
so.
We're too Italian blooded. That's
Oh,
what it
you
is.
gave a good McGregor impression, so don't be happy with that bullshit.
Stop it. But DaRon Bland here at 6. I mean, let's just read some of the stats here, Steve. First of all, burned on half the attempts, but the other half,
Yeah, right.
69 total tackles, 53 on his own. Not a sack, not a fumble
I actually
recovery
have
guy.
to correct you there. 123 total tackles for DaRon
From DaRon Bland, maybe I was looking at the solos.
this year. I feel like that's an incredible number from the cornerback position.
We're gonna need to
Fact check
to
that.
do a little edit on that.
It's all
That's
good.
right.
Yeah, it's all
So DaRon Bland here at 6. Just looking, I mean, I'm gonna go right to his interception numbers here, Steve. 9 interceptions, 15 pass deflections, 5 pick sixes. He broke a record this year.
I actually have a more important stat than all of that.
How many he got burnt on?
No.
Oh, okay.
Are you ready?
Yeah, please hit me.
DaRon Bland had as many touchdowns as Patriots wide receivers.
There you go. I mean, there you go. Seriously, the guy, and I think 1 or 2 of them were on the pass too.
Yeah.
But regardless, like DaRon Bland had an excellent year, but there were those games where you saw him get burnt. And the prime example I'm going to use is Thursday night, one of the better games of the year, I'll say. DK Metcalf made this man his bitch, dude.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf son this dude. And there were receivers throughout the league that there were some that did that. And you know what? It's part of the game when you get aggressive. We had Trayvon Diggs in our rankings when it was that time of year. Last year, right? And he had that good of a year. But there are those situations where you see they get burned, and that's what holds them back from actually being in the top 5. So DaRon Bland at 6, Steve at 5, because I know you have Bland at 4. A.J. Terrell at 5.
Okay, I love it. I don't have A.J. Terrell on the list.
A.J. Terrell's numbers don't speak the most beautiful story, right? I don't even think the guy he didn't even have an interception this year, Steve, but he had 11 pass deflections, and nobody threw at the dude.
Yeah.
The dude was balling. The interceptions ended up going to Jesse Bates, but A.J. Terrell was locked down this year, and he is one of those guys that you are going to see year in and year out people are terrified of. If Bill Belichick goes to the Atlanta Falcons, A.J. Terrell
is going to be an all-pro next year.
All-pro. He is a real good player. Keep watching out for A.J. Terrell because that dude just balled out this year.
Absolutely. And, what I just want to add in with A.J. Terrell is it's crazy to see with some talent around him what, can really come from that position. And the Falcons aren't far away. They're really not. I feel like it was an underwhelming season and a disappointment this year, the fact that they didn't get to the playoffs with the way that division worked out. But what I do just want to mention with Deron Bland before I get into my top three is that, being able to line up next to Trayvon Diggs, knowing that they'll still probably add depth at the secondary position, wherever that may be. I think there's questions about Dan Quinn potentially returning, and I feel like that could have a huge impact on this. Cornerbacks play well in Dan Quinn's system, of course, but I do feel like if they were a little bit more aggressive in that front seven, that the secondary can't even play better than what we've gotten in the past couple years. And I think, that is putting more pressure on a dude like Micah Parsons, who absolutely disappeared the second half of the season. If you want to talk and give yourself the pedestal that you do, so be it. But make sure that play relates to that. And I know that there's injuries. I know that there's banged up. But I'm not giving any excuses knowing that I've watched J.J. Watt play football and have MVP-like seasons throughout all of that. So, I literally am not here for any of that bullshit. But at 3, Jaylon Johnson allowed a 33.3 passer rating against him. He was the number 1 corner as far as coverage and the top ranked at the entire position. He allowed 1 touchdown all year and only 8 first downs. I feel like if you had that information, you would have had him higher.
Yes, I mean...
Dude, Jaylon Johnson balled out this
year.
He
balled out. He absolutely balled out. I'm looking. Maybe I played the stat game a little too much and I shot myself in the foot here. But, Steve, I'm not going to disagree with you. He played absolutely incredible. I feel like I saw it come on more in the back half of the year. Some of these guys I saw play some really good football all year long. And not to say that Jaylon Johnson didn't. He really stuck out to me at that back half, though. And maybe it's the Chicago Bears defensive unit really playing much better at the end of the year.
Oh, well, that's what I was just going to say. I feel like it's really hard to highlight a good defensive player or even like a good defensive unit if you want to just talk about the secondary because Brisker was pretty good. A couple other names that we mentioned throughout. But unless they're winning, they don't get that spotlight. They don't get that recognition. And he wouldn't have got credit if they continued to lose. But he was also part of them winning, and this was a dude that was on the trade block. This was a dude that almost got moved to the 49ers instead of a Chase Young. Imagine Jaylon Johnson and Charvarius Ward, my number 2 corner on the list, being lined up next to each other. And since I'm here, I'm just going to go into it.
Steve, go into it because I'm going to tell – I'll follow you with that one because I got a couple to go after.
Okay, so Charvarius Ward this season, 23 pass deflections. 23.
Steve, how about that INT number? What was he look? So when you have those pass deflection numbers, sometimes you're looking and the INT number's not big. But Steve, what was the INT number for Charvarius
5
Ward?
interceptions, a pick 6, 72 total tackles, an 83 Pro Football Focus grade. Another outstanding season from this dude that doesn't get that love with recognition, who isn't respected as a top corner, who spent years in Kansas City and was just passed off to San Francisco as, I don't want to say a forgotten about, but this dude has always played with an edge. You're talking about some of the best players in the secondary that the numbers will never tell the story for. Jaylon Johnson, Charvarius Ward.
Love it, Steve. I know what your number 1's going to be now, but before we get there, let me rip off a couple here. We're going to go with L'Jarius Sneed here at 4. So this is my double. I think he had such a damn good year just playing lockdown defense.
You think I disrespected him?
A little bit, but then again, I mean, like, I kind of reciprocated a little bit with Jaylon Johnson, so it's okay. We got even. But regardless, like, I mean, L'Jarius Sneed had an absolutely unbelievable year, and that's coming from a guy that absolutely hates the Chiefs more than most things in this world. So, regardless.
I'm curious to know if people know that Kev's a Bills fan or if you hate the Chiefs, and what do they hear more on this podcast?
I don't know. I really don't know. I really don't know because I really hate the Chiefs, but like there's some other things that I really hate in this world, and I'm very vocal about it. So you guys are going to get straight shooting from me constantly, I can promise you that. But here at 3, Steve, this is where I have Charvarius Ward.
Okay.
Charvarius Ward. I mean, I can't say it any better myself. You have a guy that sticks out this well as a corner on a defense that has one of the best linebackers, if not the best linebacker in the league on their team, and 2 premier pass rushers in Chase Young and Nick Bosa. I mean, this dude's still standing out. That shows you big things on a team like San Fran where it's star-studded. Charvarius Ward, what a season. Steve at 2. Why don't I say my 2 and you say your 1? Together.
Okay.
3, 2, 1. Sauce Gardner. Steve,
Absolutely.
I have Sauce Gardner here too. I think he had an absolutely unbelievable season to follow up another unbelievable season last year. He is the second best corner in the entire NFL, Steve. Before I tell everyone who the real best corner in the NFL is.
Well, the reason why I decided to give Sauce Gardner 1 is because, one, I feel like, most importantly, how can you follow up a season like last year? By having the exact season that Sauce Gardner had. And look, getting 20-something pass deflections and double-digit interceptions, that's not something that happens normally or regularly or anything like that. Sauce Gardner's play still deemed him the number 1 cover defender. Sauce Gardner's play allowed the second fewest yards against as an entire defender. Like, comparing Sauce Gardner to the rest of the defensive players in the NFL when he allowed the second fewest yards. I mean, look, I know how sorry that Jets offense was this year. And there were a lot of good players on the defensive side of the ball for the Jets. That team, that unit, that defense, Robert Saleh don't have his job if they still don't have Sauce Gardner. Sauce Gardner has that much of an impact, and look, I know who you're about to say at 1. I really don't think the seasons are that comparable, if you ask me.
But I'm going to say I do think the best corner in the entire NFL, and I think it gets overshadowed by how tough of a defensive season this team had. The only good thing they really had going consistently was Pat Surtain. I think when you're lining up, I think as far as a cover corner goes, the best cover corner, if you want one-on-one on the best receiver in the league, if you want one-on-one on anybody, if you're going to say my life depends on someone getting shut down, who do I want shutting that guy down?
Sauce Gardner.
Every single time. For the second season in a row, I am going with Pat Surtain. I get it. The numbers aren't as sexy. We have these expectations from years prior. I understand this. This is not a blasphemous take to think that he's not the number 1. I get that, but when I watch the game and I see Pat Surtain play, I see a dude that separates himself far away from everyone else, maybe of the exception of Sauce. Dude, he is a damn good corner. I would hate to line up against that guy. Everybody hates to line up against that guy. I think that where he gets dismissed a little bit this year is just based on how bad the Broncos defense really was at points, because last year when we were putting them at 1 and 2 unanimous, the Broncos defense was still playing really good. The offense couldn't succeed. This year, it's just the defense had a lot of games where they were really piss poor, but Pat Surtain was not the reason why.
What's a name that wasn't mentioned on this list that you think might get that recognition next year?
I mean, I think we're going to – I really do think – and, man, this is such a cliche take, but, like, Jair Alexander plays more games. The way he's played Justin Jefferson in his career so far, he's a dude that's absolutely going to be in this list. I also think that next year, fully healthy – here we go with the bias. I get it. Christian Gonzalez will be in this next year. He will. And you know what, Steve? I'm not going to kiss ass here, but I got to say, Tay Banks could end up in here at some point too.
I love that. And I am going to say – a rookie guy that I feel like I was pretty damn close to include on this list. And it wasn't a name that you mentioned in your snubs. Wasn't a name that you just mentioned there. Was a name that we loved throughout the draft process this past year. Joey Porter was real close. Joey Porter was real close.
He played pretty darn good this year. And I think another year under the Mike Tomlin umbrella there, I think you're going to see some big things out of him. But we'll keep an eye out for those names. There are some young guys that are just coming up, and there's going to be some names getting replaced on this list.
Absolutely. Since the Sandbox fans, this is going to wrap things up for our positional rankings at the cornerback position. A lot of differentiating. Twan definitely had Jaylon Johnson too low. I love Pat Surtain and respect his game, but not better than Sauce this year. But that's why we give you guys 2 lists. Got to differentiate. We're on to our linebackers. Peace, love, 5 stars, nothing less.